I think my biggest supporters is family. Anytime I go home or to family events, that's all that's spoken is Navajo amongst my like aunts and uncles, a few of my cousins. My mom in particular, now that I'm here at UNM and not really around too much of my family, we'll have phone calls and I'm like, speak to me strictly in Navajo, like, because I feel the urge to learn, but it's hard when you're not fully immersed 24/7. I think another good support was the Navajo language classes that have been offered not only in high school but here at the college level as well. It's hard to keep up with, and I think it's hard to put it at a college level, but I think it was definitely like some help to learn. I don't know, even just sentence structure, like things like that. And also, I listen to like KNDN and KTNN a lot too,
Oh, yeah.
and so I think, I mean, in a weird way, it's kind of a support as well because you listen to people talk on the radio in Navajo, and it's always just good to hear.
The community, pretty much. The governors, the leaders. When there's community meetings, they encourage the families to practice the language in their homes and to teach their kids the language. And my family, of course, they're trying to push me to learn the language, encourage me to learn that language.
I feel like majority of the time it's like my elders, like people that are older than me, so like my grandparents and like my aunties and uncles and stuff, because they always tell me like it's important to know the language even though you're not fluent in it, but to understand.
They know that I'm not fluent, but they break things down very simply for me. Like as far as like we can be sitting at a table and we'll be eating and they'll tell me to pass the salt or pass the knife or things like that. Things just getting the right terminology down, and they'll repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until I finally like I could be reaching for 50 million different things like this, and eventually like they're very patient with me, which I think is important because a lot of the times I feel like older generations in our community sometimes can put you down for not knowing your language, and that's not something that my family has done. They've been very supportive and they know where I am, and they know at the same time I'm getting an education as well, so they're very patient in helping me learn my language. So it could be as simple as me being at dinner with them.
I think my father, he really pushes us to learn our language and tries to implement a lot of cultural teachings in anything that we do, as far as waking up in the morning, going throughout our day, and just, just basic concepts as far as Navajo culture and tradition goes.
I guess the people here at UNM, honestly, more than anything, like Cheyenne and Kaylin White, all them, just like the people within, I don't know, like these different Native student organizations, even just like the Native community here, because I don't know, I feel myself I see myself going back in the future to my community, and also, I don't know, maybe one day running for chapter house position or something, just to give back to my community. And the only way I could really do that is if I learn my language and understand it. And so really it's just, I guess it's just that, I guess it's pressure. I'm not too sure if it's pressure or not, but just like there's that thing where, something where it's pushing me to learn it. If I want to become a leader within my own community, I have to learn it. And I think those guys are kind of pushing me towards that. So.
I think the biggest thing right now is education. Not that education is bad or anything like that, but it does take a toll on your language. It does keep you from practicing your own language, because you're basically learning the Western knowledge, Western epistemologies and stuff like that, and it's really hard to basically practice your language throughout the day, because speaking English every single day, every single minute, and you have to communicate in English these days, as far as in a secular university. So, my dad always says that in order to learn the Navajo language or the Diné language, you have to live it. And to live the language is to learn your language. So it's just this back and forth, this balance that goes hand in hand with learning your language and living it. And I think that's the biggest obstacle I face is as far as learning my language.
A big one that I felt I faced is school. School has taken priority over our language or our culture. And they've always pushed the school more than being able to practice our culture.
For me right now, I feel like it's time and also being away from home, like not being within my community, because I feel like it's easier for me to like go and ask them, like if I was home. But like from here, it's kind of hard for me to like call or be like, hey, what does this mean? But I mean, like for certain projects and stuff, if I need to know something, I'll just like call my grandpa or my grandma and be like, hey, what does this mean? Or how do I say this? And then they'll let me know.
There's a lot of it has to do with that. Not enough time to learn the language. And also too, the another big obstacle is like when you're learning and you want to speak it, there's that fear of not sounding right. Because as you know, like natives have that reputation of making fun of you for not sounding right.
I would say one of my biggest challenges when my mom or when my family members make fun of me when I'm trying to speak. Like if I were to say my bag, I said it differently, and it meant something totally different, and it was nasty. So my whole family laughed at me, and I felt embarrassed. Like it was funny, but I felt really embarrassed, and I was like, I better like watch what I say. But it's just making fun of me. Like I really don't like being humiliated, especially around my grandma. But it happens, and I have no control over it. But when I try to speak and I'm serious about it, and like my uncle or my auntie cracks a joke of what I say, it really like it puts me down another level when it shouldn't. But I think that's one challenge that I face is when my family makes fun of my accent, or when they make fun of me being so knowledgeable in the white world, but I'm not very knowledgeable in my language anymore. So yeah, that's really hard.
And I run into that sometimes with my grandparents. You know, I don't understand what they're trying to ask me. Like I was talking to my grandma not too long ago, and I guess she was talking about a straw hat, you know, and I didn't know what it was, and I forgot what it meant or how she said it, but I didn't know what she was talking about. And all this time she was telling me to get my grandpa's straw hat, and she just kept going like this. I said, I don't understand what you mean. She was like screaming at me. And then I went to my grandpa, I was like, I don't know what she's asking me about or asking me to get. And my grandpa saw it, it's a straw hat. She's asking you to get my straw hat. Oh, I didn't know there was a special or specific name for straw hat rather than a cap or a baseball hat or something. So little things like that I find that really challenging.
Just going off of that, just not being fully immersed, I think that's the hardest thing. Sometimes I'll go home, I'll go back on the reservation with my aunts and uncles and be around them for a period of time, and I'll start picking it up. But as soon as I come back here, I'm just like, I can't do it. Like it kind of just like leaves my brain, and I'm like, I don't know where it went. And then I think just another challenge is even within the Navajo language classes, it's very formal. And some of the stuff that I learn, I'll try and talk to my mom, and she's like, I don't know what you're saying to me. I'm like, am I saying it wrong? So I think that's the thing too, is it's very formal. So that's almost why I would rather reach out to my family and reach out to my mom and reach out to friends on how they speak, because I feel like if you learn it in Navajo language classes, it's almost too formal to the point to where other people who are fluent in Navajo don't necessarily understand, because slang comes along and things change and all of those kinds of things. So that's a little bit of a challenge as well.
I think it's like asking. I think there's a certain amount of humility you have to take in asking someone, "Oh, can you teach me my language?" Especially when you get older, around I guess our age, 20s. I guess people kind of expect you to at least know quite a bit of it. And if you ask, I don't know, this is just my experience, but asking my older relatives who know the language, saying, can you teach me? They kind of tease you a lot, and also, it's kind of how come you don't know it, kind of thing. And it's not even my parents' fault. It's not even anyone else's fault. It's your fault. Why don't you know your language? And I feel like that's one of the hardest parts, just asking for help.
I think the biggest thing, just the first step, is explaining the importance of it, because a lot of the times you just hear learn your language, but you don't hear why. Why do I need to know this? Why is it important to me? Why is it important to my community? Why is it important to my family, my future kids, all of that stuff? So I think that's really the first step, is establishing the why.
Well, based on my experience with my kids, I try to talk to them in the language, in my native language, in Navajo, at home. I think it starts at home. The more you talk to them, although they won't fully understand. Maybe some would, some don't. They don't really understand, but they're picking up what it means. So I would say enforce Navajo language, or whatever language you're trying to teach or reteach your children. Start it at home.
I would say creating language nests and involving women nurturers, Native women who are in support of the language, and understanding that it's not funny, and understanding where the young generation come from and trying to learn the language, and just having that respect and understanding that not all of us come back still understanding Navajo, or not all of us come back remembering the language or the culture. It's like when you're in college, your English has to boost up in order to communicate with this world out here. But then when you go back home, all of the medicine people are there, and your family, and very active within ceremonies, and then it goes back down like that. Your language goes up, and then your English goes back down. So it's kind of hard, and if we had programs, or if our communities worked towards creating a welcoming and positive environment, then things could get moving. Things would move forward. We would get over this insecurity of being humiliated, and yeah.
You have to live the language. And so I feel like communities would need to engage the youth or any adolescents into cultural and traditional ways to learn about the language. Let's say, for example, creating awareness for certain health diseases and stuff like that. A lot of kids can learn how to engage in awareness and stuff like that through the Navajo language. I think it's just constantly being surrounded by cultural and traditional ways to learn about the language.
Yeah, I would say put yourself in their shoes. Maybe think about how you would feel if they didn't know the language. And yeah, just put yourself in their shoes. They say you don't know until you walk along in their shoes.